Thank you, Karen. And I am excited not only to be in the heart of Union Square, but I'm just excited to be anywhere in San Francisco nowadays as we begin the process to reopen and reimagine what San Francisco can be as we come out of this pandemic. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year because our focus was on public health and saving lives. And we know it's been a tough year for businesses. It's been a tough year for tourism. It's been a tough year for employees and others throughout San Francisco. And we keep talking about this light at the end of the tunnel. Well, today it's bright in Union Square, and I'm feeling the light, and I'm excited about the future of our city. I just wanted to take this opportunity to really acknowledge some of the amazing people joining us today. A few you will hear from, but specifically the new director of the Arts Commission in San Francisco, Ralph Remington, is joining us. And Ralph, you're going to have to take off your mask so they can recognize you when they see you out in the streets.
Fully vaccinated.
And some of us know she's the new director of Grants for the Arts, but she's been involved in advocating for so many arts programs and businesses in San Francisco. We have joining us Valley Brown, the director of Grants for the Arts. And our new director of the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, Kate Sophus. Many of you know her from SF Made and all the wonderful things that she's doing. And you'll hear from the other two speakers that are joining us, and I will introduce them. And I want to recognize Deputy Chief from the San Francisco Police Department. Thank you, Chief Lazar. I want to say captain, but you went from a captain and you've moved on up in the ranks, and we appreciate you in the San Francisco Police Department and everything that you do to help keep our citizens safe. We also have, thank you, Karen, and the Union Street bid for your work, because I know your work and your advocacy is why we are here today. And why are we here today? We're here to talk about San Francisco's recovery, and that's why I am smiling. It is a great day in San Francisco, and when you think about where we are now and how far we've come, just sit in that moment. The Giants are first place in the league. They're not first place anymore? Okay. All right. Well, we hope that the Giants will become first place in the league. Yes. But they're playing, and you can go to a game. Unfortunately, the Warriors didn't make it through, but that's okay. At least we got a few games in before they were X'd out of the playoffs. And what's also happening is the San Francisco Symphony is open. You can watch a performance there. Stern Grove is coming back with concerts, and that's going to be amazing. The Hilton Hotel just announced that it is opening, and I see Kevin Carroll from the Hotel Council. John's Grill, I know John Jr. is here. Thank you for joining us. Performances on Sundays and so many activities, so many great events. The city is coming alive again. And as we begin to recover and we think about what happens downtown in Union Square, downtown is where about 40% of the jobs that exist in San Francisco, they're here in the downtown area. When we think about the economy and coming back, the retail and the business and the activities, this is the bread and butter of San Francisco. This is why we are able to pay for programs and resources and all the things that help out so many of our vulnerable communities. The tourists, the 20 million tourists who visit San Francisco every year that pay the hotel tax, that shop at Macy's and a number of our small businesses. Downtown is the economic engine of San Francisco. And so it is so important that as we begin to reopen, that we reimagine what downtown can be. We have to make it a safer place for people who live and work here. Now, I'm a regular visitor to the downtown area, and I do hear from so many of the people who work here, many of the women in particular who work in retail, who catch the 31 Balboa and the 5 Fulton from the Western Addition, people I grew up with, who have expressed to me their concerns about their safety when they've never felt that way in San Francisco before. And what that means is we have to do more. We have to do more to keep people safe. We have to do more to make sure that people have a rewarding experience. They feel good about being here, because when they visit San Francisco and they leave, we want them to want to come back. We want people who live and work here to feel safe. Now, it's been about, I think, 2 years when I announced the ambassador program. Karen, you remember when you had that event and I said, we're going to bring retired police officers out of retirement and have an ambassador program solely focused on this particular area in Union Square. After a few years of bureaucracy, it finally happened. So right now, that ambassador program is really an important part of our recovery. The goal is to have the eyes and to ears on the streets. The goal is to make sure that when people are in crisis, we're able to address those challenges. And a perfect example is one time when I was down here near Crate and Barrel, a man clearly didn't have shoes on, needed some help, needed some support, and some of the ambassadors tried to help him, but what's next? What's next? How do we get him off the streets into a place where he can get the support he needs? And part of some of my recent announcements have been our street crisis response team. So it's not just about a police response. Our street wellness teams to check on people, to deal with folks in crisis. I get so many calls from so many people in this community concerned about not just their business and how this is impacting the quality of life in this community, but how are we going to do more to help these people off the streets? And so a combination of my investments in this upcoming budget have everything to do with trying to reimagine, beautify, provide the level of support necessary to bring this area back stronger than ever, to make it a vibrant, a more welcoming place, and make sure that people have great experiences. So what do some of those investments look like? Well, some of you remember I used to be the executive director of the African American Art and Culture Complex. And the thing I loved about that space is artists make communities come alive. People would paint on the walls. I'm not advising that to happen down here in downtown. People would dance in the parking lot and in the streets. I'm not suggesting that we do that and stop traffic. But we are going to bring our artists to this area. We are going to start to activate the community with local artists, providing resources to pay them, because I believe in paying artists and they deserve to be paid their worth. But to really bring them to this area and to create an environment at Holiday Plaza that will really activate the area. So we're going to be making some improvements and some investments. And yes, I'd like the cable cars to come back sooner than later, but I can't make that promise today, Karen. But the fact is, we're going to activate Holiday Plaza. We're going to bring in some new businesses, some activation. And so when you're getting off BART and you're coming to San Francisco, the first thing you can do is maybe grab a coffee or grab a San Francisco coffee mug or have this great San Francisco experience. So Holiday Plaza will be different than what it is now. It will be activated. Our ambassadors will be in the location. We will make it safe, and the goal is to have a great and rewarding experiences. So part of my budget will be to increase not just our ambassador programs with the retired police officers, but the ambassadors and the people that walk around this community and try to provide eyes and ears on the streets to address many of those challenges. And so our ambassadors, I know, in the red coats are joining us here today. So thank you for your work and your continued support of this community. Because they may not realize it's me in disguise, but I've seen them on occasion out there helping people, offering bottled water, trying to provide support and services. And we'll be right there with them with our street crisis response team and our street wellness team, concentrating on this area so that when we see people in crisis, we're able to respond quickly as a city and deal with it so all of you can focus on your businesses. That is our goal. The other thing that we are doing as we head down this road to recovery is really trying to focus on how do we make it easier for people to do business in San Francisco. And, I don't even want to name the stores that I love that closed because, I'm heartbroken over the fact that they are no longer in San Francisco. And I've reached out to a number of those stores who said, look, we may come back, but doing business in San Francisco is hard. Thanks to the voters, we passed Proposition H to help deal with some of the bureaucracy, but it wasn't enough. So I put out a business recovery plan that's supposed to be working its way through the Board of Supervisors. I put out a plan to make our shared spaces program permanent that's supposed to be making its way through the Board of Supervisors. But the board has messed with the wrong mayor. When they tried to butcher my legislation and water it down and make it even more difficult and complicated so businesses continue to struggle and have difficulty doing business in San Francisco, that's when I take a different sort of action. So if they want to continue down that path, my plan is to bring it to the voters, to put it on the ballot, and to make sure that you all have a real voice and that the voters support these efforts. Overwhelmingly, the people of this city, people who grow up and want to start their own small business, they shouldn't need $250,000 to give to the water department or some angel investor just because they want to sell their clothing or their mask or their artwork. It should not be so difficult. And as I said time and time again, my focus is to cut the bureaucratic red tape that make it impossible for people to do business in San Francisco. Because it's not just about creating an economic opportunity for the people starting these businesses, it's about creating jobs. It's about creating an increased tax base to support all these services that we all want to support communities in San Francisco. It goes hand in hand. So I am making that clear today, that if the board continues down this path, my plan is to bring it to the voters, and I know that you all will be with me when I do that at that time. So here's a couple of official announcements that I think I might have forgotten about, so that's why we had to write them down. Community ambassadors to Union Square and downtown, as I talked about. Investments in the budget for activation and events. SF Wednesdays, a local artist will be performing 12 to 6 from July through October. That's going to be great. Improvements to Holiday Plaza, as I said, on Market Street. A series of performances at the former temporary Transbay Terminal, so activating that area downtown. And we're going to start ramping up in July throughout the summer months, because we know that we need to change this area. We need to make sure it comes alive. And I am so excited to see the activation in the people, eating at the various restaurants, shopping at the various stores, or just sitting right here in Union Square and people watching, just because we miss seeing faces. Eventually, these masks are going to hopefully go away. But in the meantime, continue to shine, San Francisco. We are open for business. Thank you all so much for being here today.